Let's try number 2. Okay, now we're making money. All right, so welcome to TED Talk number 2, air-to-air sensors. We are going to be basically dissecting the Hornet's air-to-air radar. We're going to touch a little bit on the azimuth elevation page and a little bit on the situational awareness page. And I'm going to do a little bit of a demo because I didn't manage to get screenshots of all the integration that it comes in with the JHMCS. So yeah, all those things. That's what we're talking about. So the first thing we got to learn about, or the first thing we should touch on, is the actual controls that we're going to handle, right? Because that's how else are we going to integrate and speak to the jet. It's also some stuff that commonly gets overlooked and that we forget about. But on your flight stick, you've got 2 major hat switches. The main one being your sensor control switch, which is right up here, also known as the castle switch. Forward is going to put you in your ACM modes, and I'm not going to discuss those right now, but we can later. When you're in air-to-air mode, going left is going to put up the azimuth elevation format on the left DDI. Going aft or down is going to swap between your HSI and your SA page, and going right is going to swap between the attack radar and whatever non-actionable page was already up. And it's also going to, if the radar attack page is already up, it's going to put you into auto acquisition mode. And this is pretty handy, but it works a little funny, and I'll talk about that later. The depress function is a bit of a modifier now. It acts like it, I think it's closer to what it's supposed to act like in the real jet. But mostly you're going to be doing this in combination with sensor control switch to the right, which is going to do your IFF interrogation. But honestly, you shouldn't ever need to do that with the way that the Hornet automatically sets itself up. Your other primary hat switch is your weapon select switch. Forward's your aim 7s. Left doesn't have a function. Aft is for your gun. Going right or inboard is going to select the aim 120s. And depressing is going to select your aim 9s. The last 3 functions on the stick, the undesignate or nose wheel steering switch, also known as the pinky switch. It's going to step through your track files. It's going to swap your dual target tracking launch and steer. And we'll go over what that means in a second. It's also going to unlock your single target track launch and steer. And it's also going to exit your ACM modes. Note that it doesn't necessarily exit auto acquisition mode. And I'll kind of go over what kind of fucky wuckies you got to do to fix that. The Recce event mark switch, which is right under the castle switch or right under the trim switch, is going to blank your JHMCS as long as your SA page is not the sensor of interest. And it's also going to expand on the SA page if it is your sensor of interest. So be careful with that. Your trigger, stage 1, doesn't do much. I believe it's supposed to fire the laser in air-to-ground mode. Stage 2, which is fully depressing it, is going to fire your forward-firing munitions or air-to-air weapons. Any questions on the stick before I push forward? No? Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Your throttle contains a couple other controls. Mainly your TDC or target designation cursor. It's going to move the cursor on whatever sensor of interest you have selected. Your antenna elevation, which is nestled back there. It's a spring-loaded, kind of, not a rotary. It's a spring-loaded switch that auto centers. And DCS does respect that auto centering function. So it kind of can mess with you if you've got it set to a rotary switch. This is going to adjust the antenna elevation scan up and down, and it's also going to adjust the field of view or zoom when you've got the FLIR format up. Your cage uncage switch, which is that guy out there, on your aim 7, it's going to toggle the loft mode, whether it lofts or doesn't automatically. And on your AIM-9, it's going to toggle the seeker slave to the radar or bore-sighted, or I think not linked to the radar at all. Honestly, I've had issues with it behaving properly. I prefer to just not use the radar while using AIM-9s because of this kind of weird behavior that I've observed. And finally, your RAID FOV switch. That's going to enter STT RAID, one look RAID, or scan RAID on the currently locked launch and steer that you've selected on the radar format. So, no questions on the throttles or any of the controls? Good. This is essentially all the functions that you're going to need mapped to utilize the Hornet to its fullest potential, or to use all the functions available to you. So the attack radar page, this is what you're typically going to have up on your right hand DDI, or MFD, whatever you want to call it. And range while scan is the most basic form of the Hornet's radar. And what I've got displayed here is actually the attack radar while it's set up outside of air-to-air mode. It's in navigation mode, not air-to-air or air-to-ground selected, which gives you a couple of weird options, mainly this number 10 here, the air-to-surface toggle, so it'll switch between air-to-air and air-to-surface modes. I believe this is also available in the air-to-ground mode, but I don't remember. Main things to take away from this is that you can action the bar setting, or how tall the radar scan is, how many bars it's doing. You can silence it with that SIL button here. You can increase and decrease the scope range. This doesn't actually increase or decrease how far the radar is actually detecting things, it's just how much is being displayed on the scope. Your reset button is going to drop all tracks that are currently active on the radar page. So if you have something selected as your launch and steer, and also a dual target DT2, this will dump both of them from memory and start rebuilding the track file. Your NCTR function is enabled and disabled here. There's a couple of limitations to it. And we'll go over those in a second. This guy right here, number 7, is going to enter your data sublevel, and we're about to go into that in a second. Your azimuth setting, meaning how wide the radar beam is scanning, is from that push tile there. And your PRF setting is activated from here. To be perfectly honest, PRF is a little funny in DCS. I've had good results with interleaved, but some people have different opinions. I'm just letting you know, like, interleaved works plenty fine, and you're going to get about the same detection range as leaving it on high, or yeah, just leaving it on high and expecting a hot bandit. We already went over this. You can switch from range while scan to track while scan using that push tile there. You can also action all of these with the cursor. So your mode, your bar setting, your range scale, you can action that. Same with the azimuth. Cool. So now we move on to the actual symbology. What do all the numbers on that screen mean, really? So this first one is kind of important, especially when we're dealing with an air-to-air engagement and we're trying to coordinate with other people and build a common picture. That is where your cursor is relative to bullseye. And that diamond may switch to a circle depending on whether or not the waypoint selected is the air-to-air waypoint. Right now it's displayed as if it is the currently selected waypoint, but honestly it doesn't matter. What you're worried about is that number there, because that's telling you where it is. If you're going to give some kind of bullseye call to AWACS or anybody else, that's the number you're reading off. 2 is your own ship magnetic heading. Again, your magnetic heading not your true heading. Minor distinction, but it can sometimes affect it because the F10 map only displays true, not magnetic, so it may throw you off sometimes. That little diamond in the corner, you should be very familiar with it. That is your sensor of interest indicator, meaning that if you see that diamond in the top right-hand corner of whatever display you're working on, it means that that is the screen that is that you can move the cursor around in. That 20 is the range that it's at right now. So you see that top is at 20, bottom is at 0, meaning that this is 0 range. This is 20 nautical miles away. That 20 is this top line here, not this empty space. And these are little hash marks that divide the screen up into fourths. So, oh, question? No? Okay, all right. So number 6, your own ship barometric altitude. 7 is the scan line. So this is physically where the radar beam currently is across its scan. As you shrink your azimuth of the radar scan, you'll see that it moves across way faster. But it doesn't actually give you the limit of, there's no visualization of where that beam is actually going to stop. You just kind of have to eyeball whether or not it's going to go the full 140 or whatever you set it to. Actually, speaking of that, these hash marks at the bottom represent 30-degree increments. So the Hornet's radar beam width is 70 degrees. That's why it goes a little past that second 30-degree marker. And I guess I didn't go over it, but the way that the radar is displayed is it's called a B-scope. And what it does is, so you take the cone that is in front of the nose, right? And you stretch that point of the bottom of the cone, and you stretch it out to be squared with the edge of the scope. So as something gets closer and it's staying in the same relative bearing to you, it should stay going in a straight line. And this is kind of important when you're wanting to build a collision course. You'll notice that it does funny things. So if something is just flying parallel to you, you may start to see it drift out as it goes farther and farther away from you, while still getting closer. So that center number there is your own ship bullseye. Ignore that 4121. That's like a generated number from the mission computer. I'm not sure what it really is. But this is your own position relative to bullseye. So these two important numbers to look for. So when AWACS is asking you for an alpha check, or you ask for an alpha check and AWACS gives you a number back, this is the number you're checking against. 9 is the cursor's bra position. So bearing, range, and altitude relative to you. So right now the cursor is dead center of my scope. Makes sense. My scope is set to 20 miles. It's 017 from me. So if I turn to 017, that's where this is. Bearing, range is 10.5 nautical miles. And your own ship airspeed. So that's your indicated airspeed, and that's your Mach. And that triangle, or that little caret here, is the current position of the radar antenna in elevation. And if I remember it right, each one of these little hash marks here is 10 degrees. Yeah, so that would put it at 30 degrees, and then it doesn't do the hash marks past that. So this is going to be a quick indication if you don't have the azimuth elevation format pulled up. You can see where something is pretty quickly, nose position and elevation. Questions on any of the symbology?
Flatlines real quick, two quick things. Just for everybody, the display does not do you a huge favor on this with the way it displays bullseye with the 2-digit bearing. So just try not to fall into the trap of reading off bullseye or bra with just 2 digits, because it's a minor thing, but people are listening for 3 digits for bearing. So if you come out with 2 numbers, it's gonna kind of break their brain for a half second until they realize what you said. So what I'm talking about is you read off like, oh hey, target set bullseye 17 for 11.9, and I just had an aneurysm because really I want to hear 3 digits for bearing, and I want to hear just the whole number for range. So do a little bit of brain work on your own and don't just spat out the numbers that the display is showing you. So really it would be bullseye 017 for 12 would be the ideal what you're going to pass over the radio. Second thing, and I swear to God, I'm pretty sure I'm not making this up, the 4121 at the very bottom, time instead of menu, TISM, TISM, so that's the minutes and seconds.
That's the uptime of the mission computer, I'm assuming?
That's the clock you got in the jet. No, not uptime, that's the time.
That's the time.
Yeah. So it's 41 minutes, 21 seconds after the top of the hour.
I believe it's the elapsed time, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. That's a bit too academic. That's esoteric knowledge that is useless.
It's useful. It's useful if you're going to try to time based on a maneuver that you see the enemy doing, and if you're going to try to be like, oh, I'm going to wait, X amount of seconds. The clock's right there to look at.
Well, now I know. Thanks, Easy.
Got a question here.
Okay.
So you said the cone of the radar. So when I'm looking at 140 degrees, is that the top line or the bottom line?
So you have to visualize it like this. This is 140 degrees and 20 nautical miles away. This is this is 70 degrees to your left, or where my mouse is right now, and 20 miles away. And this is 70 degrees to my left at 0 miles away.
Okay.
It's a little weird to visualize, but again, it's like,
Bring up the F-15, that website with the F-15 radar,
oh, the TAL website, I think.
something like that.
Yeah. I don't think I have that bookmarked.
The more closer it is, the more stretched it is.
Yeah, so like, again, like literally take that cone and that point at the end where it's emanating from, just stretch it out to be a straight line.
Right.
That's essentially how it looks. Okay. So the data sublevel. This is where you can start modifying what's actually being put up on the attack radar page. The first and probably the most important setting that you can manipulate here is this, the age limit. And I'm going to speak of this simply in terms of how it works in DCS. This is not how it works in the real jet. In DCS, this impacts how long a track file stays in memory and how long it can extrapolate where that track is going to be. I'm inclined to say that it's actually super gamey and that it just keeps the track in memory and has perfect information of the track, and it doesn't actually do the math to, extrapolate it. So real metagamers will tell you set this to 32 and forget it. I don't like doing that for two reasons. One, it's like it feels dirty doing that, but two, it like clutters up the radar screen with hits for way too long, and you end up locking up these old radar hits by accident sometimes. So it can pay off to have it maxed out. I don't really use it. I'm gonna say just do what you want with it, but this is what impacts how long that track file stays. This is probably like 90% of why people say the Hornet radar sucks when they're using the AIM-120, because this defaults to 4 seconds when you're using the default profile that the AIM-120 like defaults to in the Hornet. So you set this to 16, or anything bigger than 8 is probably good enough. One look raid is you just turn this on and off. It will enable or disable raid functionality while you have an STT track. I turn it on just because I turn it on. I don't really care. It's nice to have the extra hits, nice to have the extra SA. The practical application of it, questionable. 3 color. that's just going to turn off the color symbology if you unbox it. So if you want it to be all green, you can click that. I don't know why you would do that, why you would torture yourself, but hey, if that's your thing, go for it. For MSI, or multi-sensor integration, this is going to turn on and off the like surveillance tracks that you would, well, the surveillance overlay symbology that you would get on the attack radar. And we'll go over what all that looks like in the next couple of slides. Press LTWIS. LTWIS is pretty big. So by default, so what you're seeing here is what it defaults to in the jet. Without touching anything, the only thing I've touched to make the screenshot is the age limit. So by default, the Hornet will be in LTWIS. It will have MSI enabled. It will have color enabled. One look will be disabled, and it will have all declutter options on. And it will also have BRA enabled. And you can disable and enable that BRA readout with that push tile. And the attack, or RWR attack, it's basically going to turn on and off the RWR symbology at the top of the scope. So you can disable that from here. ECCM, this function here and this function here are not implemented yet, so don't bother with it. Maybe one day we'll get enough of the radar simulated to be able to click those buttons.
A quick comment.
Sure.
I'm still new to all this. Like, about the data H time, I've only found it useful to go above 16 personally when I'm doing like as wide as possible artery scan at 146 bars, and I'm trying to, I've got a waiting track on one target and I want to not lose the other, or if I'm trying to make sure that I'm building an intercept with solid hits on this one, otherwise it's really reduces probably too against this.
Yeah, we'll go over. That's probably the next lesson, actually building techniques. But yeah, 8 to 16 is what I found in the sweet spot. Again, just put it to more than 4, just more than 4, and you'll be fine. So, next part of the radar, that little top section that I was talking about, that's called the dugout. This is where your angle-only tracks are going to be displayed. So that one right there is a own ship only, because you can only see the top section of the HAFU. Top is yours, the bottom is donor. So 3 is a correlated one, so you don't have any IFF or NCTR info, but it's being tracked as hostile by a surveillance donor or another PPLI participant. So another flight member, some other AI asset that has link 16 on it. And 4, this is pretty recent actually. This is your threat cross. This is gonna, if you press the nose wheel steering button, or that pinky button, that's the next track that it's gonna lock onto, or start building an LTWIS track for. So, neat thing, those angle-only tracks, you can correlate them from surveillance tracks from, an offboard AWACS AIC. So if I know that he's on this same azimuth, and I see like one of those like little surveillance tracks right there, I kind of know what range I'm at, aren't I? Like I know how far away this guy is to me, because I've got another sensor giving me track information for it, the ranging information for it at least. Unfortunately, you can't lock onto it with ranging information, which means that you're still going to be firing a missile that's going home on jam essentially, but it gives you better awareness of like where they are relative to you, instead of being completely blind of where they are in range. So yeah, they're gonna go on a pure PN pursuit, which is a home on jam. Spot mode. You can enter spot mode by, you gotta be in air-to-air mode, and you just press and hold the throttle's TDC for more than 1 second. And once you release it, you'll get this X through the middle of your TDC. And you'll see spot at the bottom of the scope. And what it does is it narrows down it's essentially still in range while scan. And it's going to narrow down your azimuth to that 22 degrees at the assigned bar setting. So if I wanted to get a very, very tight excuse me, a very tight azimuth scan of some piece of sky that I don't know what altitude he's at, I could just switch that to 6 bar, and it's essentially acting like a Twiz 20 degree 6 bar scan. However, it's not going to automatically lock whatever's in there. What you can do, though, is that once you've like narrowed it down to that little bit of sky and you have a very fast refresh on it, you can go into automatic acquisition. So just going SCS to the right once you got your hit. And that's going to put you in a single target track with what you just locked. Or with what you just spotted in spot mode. That makes sense? I'm going to assume it did. Okay, so now that we've learned all of that, we can actually start locking things up, right? So the most common way to do lock a target is to single target track it, right? And that's essentially really focusing down the radar energy onto one piece of sky, focused onto one guy. What this does is, one, give you very good, reliable track information on something. You're a little more resistant to somebody being in a notch while in STT. Again, I say a little bit more because DCS is DCS and shit happens. But you're going to get a lot more detailed information of what you're trying to track. So whenever you lock something or launch and steer lock something, you're going to get the target's bullseye information. So this is where the bandit is relative to bullseye. It's at 322 for 9. And it's tracking 331. So it's tracking northwest. I can't math. While you're in STT, you can actually go right into Twiz Auto by pressing that push tile. So that's going to Twiz Auto onto whatever you just STT'd. However, you did just STT the guy, so they're going to know that you tried to lock them. They're going to know that you're trying to do something with them. You can reset or drop the lock by either pressing this button here or pressing the nose wheel steering button. And 5, that big green circle, is your acceptable steering error circle, or your ASE circle. So what you want to do is you want to put your steering dot, that little dot there on 7, inside of this. If you were just staring at your radar screen, you would just want to maneuver to put that into there, and then it's okay. Now you've got shoot conditions as long as you're in range. 6, if the bullseye waypoint is like inside of your like field of view, it's going to show up as this little marker here. This is your track's bra relative to you. So he is 352 for 28 miles from me. That's how far away he is from me. And 9, these little lines stacked up down here, are the dynamic launch zone markers, or your LAR markers. So that top one is RMAX. That second to last one, or that one in the middle, is your range no escape. And that bottom one is your RMIN, or minimum range. And 10 will return to search in range while scan mode. That's what RTS means. And you'll notice here that you still have the scan line while in STT. I forgot to note that down. And that's going to tell you where it is, relative to you. So right now he's about 10 degrees off my nose, about like, I don't know, probably like 3 or 4 degrees high, which makes sense because he's like 12,000 feet above me. So you can correlate all that information just from looking at the screen. So latent track while scan. This is probably the most common mode that you're going to be in. This is like, I probably should have put this one before, but this is what you default to, right? So in LTWIZ, you'll get all this fancy overlaid information with MSI enabled. So you're going to get your RWR repeater information up here. So that's what that 14 is. It's telling you that on your 30 degrees to your left is a radar emission from an F-14. That weird looking thing there is a unknown surveillance contact, so it's I guess it would be ambiguous, right? So that's, you don't have any friendly or hostile IFF information from your own ship, and AWACS doesn't have any information on it either, but you can tell it's traveling away from you. 3 is just a raw hit. I don't know why I put uncorrelated, but that's just a raw radar return. 4 is your current launch and steer target, and you can tell because it's got that star in the middle. 5 is once again your LAR DLZ information, and 6 is a just surveillance, hostile surveillance hit with a raw radar return in close proximity that you can correlate to it. So using this, you can enter, I could cursor up to this guy up here at 3, I could TDC depress on it, and I would then have a dual target track, which is what we're about to get to here. So dual target track is something you can do both in TWIS and in LTWIS. Probably more effective in TWIS, but you have the option in LTWIS. Essentially what you're telling the mission computer is saying, hey, this is the guy I want steering information for, meaning weapon employment information for, and I also want you to track this guy as a secondary so that I can quickly swap to that next target. So the steering information again is for launch and steer DT1, your primary one that you're trying to get information for. In this case, it's this unknown contact with the star in the middle. So that's his bullseye information. That's where he's heading. That's his heading. So this is also showing my selected weapon. Your DT2 is this guy over here. It's kind of hard to see, but he's going to have a little diamond in the middle of his HAFU. 6 is just more like HAFU information that you may see. That's a friendly PPLI donor or Link 16 donor. And again, your LAR information, it's going to give you for information for both your DT1 and DT2. And 8 is also going to be your BRA information for your primary launch and steer. You can swap which one's which. So if I wanted to have this guy become DT2 and this guy become DT1 or launch and steer, I would just press the nose wheel steering button and it would swap the priorities over. And I can drop both of them by just pressing the reset button there. This is what gets people fucked up all the time because they'll be trying to like undesignate and it's just swapping between 2 different targets. Oh man, there's one thing I didn't cover. So once you go into air-to-air mode and you start like being able to configure things, that set button. So what that set button does is it saves whatever settings you have currently up here for the selected weapon. So if I wanted to set my AIM-7s to always be at an 80 nautical mile scope and a 4-bar scan, I would set these 2 things and then I would click set. And you're going to see it box temporarily and then it's going to go away. And let's say I decrease the range down to like 10 miles and then I wanted to get it back to 80 miles. Instead of clicking that button twice, all I need to do is like switch to AIM-120s and then switch back to AIM-7s, and it's going to reset the radar to 4-bar at 80 nautical miles instead of pressing this a bunch of times and then missing it. This also saves your selected age limit settings for the hits, so that's pretty important, and it's gonna carry that information over into TWIS whenever you select that weapon. Actually, I can demonstrate that to you. So, give me a couple seconds. Let me switch over the stream here on Discord. So I'm just going to demonstrate this with active pause for its distance. Okay. So, again, let's say I'm setting up my my AIM-7s for what I wanted, right? So, I've selected my AIM-7s using my weapon select switch. I'm going to set the range for 80 miles, 6 bars, and 16 seconds here. I'm going to back out of the data sublevel, and I'm just going to click set. Now when I switch to 120s, it's a completely different setting. But as soon as I switch back to AIM-7s, it's already set up 6 bar, 80 miles, and it retains the target age limits. So this is really useful in being able to just quickly switch weapons with quickly configured settings that you know you want. And let me switch back to presentation. There we go. Nope. I'll hop back and forth between demonstrating and in this as we go on. Actually, no, I guess that does cover all of Alt-Wiz. Okay, so track while scan. This is, again, probably the most used mode of the Hornet's radar. The thing you have to remember is that track while scan has limits to how much it can scan, like what volume of space is available for it, because it has to retain memory of a track file for a certain amount of time to have, what would you call it? I'm losing it right here. A good reliable track. That's what it tries to do. It tries to extrapolate where the target's going to be between the passes of the radar beam between it. So your controls for TWIS. Hits is enabled by default. I leave it on. Sometimes it's useful to turn them off if you want to just get the track file information that's completely synthesized by the mission computer. But sometimes it's useful to see like what trends you see the bandit making. Raid is going to go straight into scan raid while you're in TWIS. So that number here, 3, is your closure velocity, or V sub C, or VC. 4 is going to toggle between automatic and manual. This will also take you out of bias mode, which I should probably explain. So give me a second again to hop into the sim and demonstrate what I mean by that. Oop. Okay. All right, so going into my 120s. Okay. So I've gone into TWIS, and let's say I want to track this guy right here.
You're still on the PowerPoint.
Oh, god damn it. Why is it not changing? That's really weird. Okay. Let me see if this works. Better?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. So right now I don't have anything selected as launch and steer, which is kind of a good demonstration on its own. the way I can get a launch and steer is one of two ways. I can either cursor over it and then TDC to press, or I can simply press the nose wheel steering button or undesignate switch, and I will create a launch and steer. Now, what the hell was I actually going to demonstrate? Right, bias mode. So once I've got a launch and steer, I can bias the radar towards a certain direction. So let's say I wanted to keep scanning between these two guys, right? I would just click an empty space on the radar page. And why am I not doing things? Because I am in auto, not auto. Yeah. Yeah, so I have to be in auto, and then I'll press an empty space, and it's going to bias the scan towards wherever I placed it. I can still manipulate the elevation, as you can see in the ASL page over here, and with the cursor changing its numbers there, but it kind of focuses it down, or it starts to lean the radar beam in that direction instead of centering it on the launch and steer that it would normally do while in automatic mode. I can come out of
bias and manual.
Say again?
What's the difference between bias and manual?
Manual, when I put into manual, I can completely deselect all my targets, and I can just, instead of it being centered, I can just click on an empty space, and it's going to automatically slew the radar to scan in that direction without automatically building a launch and steer. So again, I've just biased it in this direction, and not biased it, but I've slewed it in this direction. And it's important to note here that it doesn't follow my TDC. Like, I can move it all the way over to the left here. I have to TDC to press in an empty space, and then it's going to move the radar beam in this direction. I can put it on auto, and then press the nose wheel steering button. It's going to automatically center up on that next track file. Yep. Okay. Now let's see if I can swap back and forth again. There we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, here we go. So, gone over the automatic, manual, and bias toggle. The expand function, I'll go over in another slide in a sec, but this is going to put you in and out of the expand function. 6 is again your antenna elevation, visually represented. You can also kind of tell with the elevation information presented right over the cursor. 7 is your launch and steer HAFU, kind of self-explanatory. 8 are your hits that you're getting, and you can see that they kind of correlate with the track heading. It's kind of hard to see, but that little stem there, that's pointing straight down at me, so he's pointing directly at me. And again, your LAR information. So expand mode. This is honestly a really useful tool to have. And the great thing about expand mode is that you can still step through track files while in expand mode. I don't think you can do it while in RAID. RAID is a totally different thing, although it sort of gives you a similar view. So while in expand, you can still toggle your hits. You can go into RAID from expand, which is neat. And it's going to clamp all the HAFUs that are still in your scope to the edge of the screen. So the radar can still see this track file here, number 3, but it's outside of the zoomed in view that it's currently at. But to keep awareness of it, the Hornet will display it clamped to the edge of the screen relative to the locked targets. Again, you can toggle your automatic and manual settings here. You can reset your launch and steer from the expand mode. And yeah, so 7 is your primary, your launch and steer 1, or DT1, and then your secondary DT2 is that guy back there. A little easier to see the square that comes up on it. again, your ASC circle, because you've got launch and steer information for something. Again, your LAR. Again, your antenna elevation, and you'll get your RWR repeater information at the top still. So when you go into expand mode, the range scale shrinks to 10 nautical miles centered on the currently selected launch and steer. So you can see this guy's 37 miles from me. The scope now goes from, this is 5 miles in front of the launch and steer, and this is 5 miles behind the launch and steer. And it's also 20 degrees across. So that's 20 degrees to the left, 20 degrees to the right. Kind of fucks with what those little carrots are. And you can exit by depressing the expand button right here. I just realized you guys can't see my mouse cursor, can you?
Yeah, we're able to.
Oh shit, okay, never mind.
Yeah, we're good.
Let me once again try and demonstrate this in game, because it's a bit better to do that. Wow, it's really still not still on the PowerPoint, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I don't know why Discord is doing that. It's really weird. It's really weird. Okay, guess I'm gonna have to kill it and try it again. Man, that's annoying. Alright. Alright. Let's try this again. Okay. Alright, so I'm in Twiz. I've got a launch and steer created. All I gotta do now is press that expand function, right? So I'll expand on it. And now you can see the radar beam, or not the radar beam, but that LAR line extending to him. I can switch this to manual, automatic. That's basically it. Now I can really clearly select that other guy, or step to him if he didn't drop. But now that he dropped, can't select him. But yeah, especially for guys like these, let me see if I can lock them up. Gotta go back into manual. Let me get the radar beams centered on them. Yep, there they are. So I'll just track them automatically now. I got good IFF from them. And now I can see that there's actually 4 contacts, and I can break them out. And I can actually step through all of them just by pressing the nose wheel steering button. And it's going to stay within those 4 that I've got in the expand FOV kind of area. So this is a really useful tool for sorting. Yeah, look at that. They all break out nicely.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that existed at all, actually. Yes.
And again, it's more useful than just RAID because actually, let me see if maybe I'm wrong, but I've had very limited success with using RAID to step through contacts, because I think it clamps the radar beam down onto a single contact to get that resolution cell to break them out. In DCS, though, we don't have to worry about that because it's DCS. Nope, I guess not. I guess you can do it. I stand corrected. I am dumb. Or maybe it's not. Yeah, no, it is locking the radar beam down, because you can see right here where the cursor is, the scan line of the radar beam is locked into that position. And then once I Yeah, because this is still relative to the launch and steer. Anyway, it's a good function to help you sort out closely packed in bandits. Okay. Back to where we were. All right. Goddamn, what a slog. Scan rate, we just went over this. Easy, maybe you can help me out here, because I still do not know what these two numbers mean, and that's about the only two things I needed to fill out for this.
Nope.
Yeah, I can't tell either.
Rate of the mystery, dude.
Yeah. Crazy shit. It's like, essentially in game they act as a zoom function.
Would 2 not be the close rate?
It is not.
And then 4, would that not be the difference in elevation? No, because you're at...
I'm at 19.
32.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, and it's
Maybe
stuff.
meters instead of feet.
Really doubt it. Yeah, I'm not sure. But the one interesting thing that happens is that you'll only get the altitude on the Hafu, and then the Mach number gets moved up here with the bandit heading.
I think it is in meters on 4 your difference in elevation. Just doing quick maths.
It would make sense, yeah.
That's weird.
I don't know why it would change units. Maybe it's just the... It would make sense for that to be there. But maybe just DCS-isms, and because meters are the core units, or that's what the game is written in, it displays it.
Yeah, that's about 4,000 feet.
Yeah. Bug report. I'll send that out. Okay. We finally reached the end of the attack radar page. Do we have any questions on all the different functions in the attack radar page before I move on? Does anybody want to take a breather and like defry their brain after this?
Good. I'm used to mental overload on complicated topics.
Okay.
Can I ask a comment?
Yeah, sure.
I still don't understand the manual biasing, but I'm gonna go play with that some more. And then the still or the silence option, I've enjoyed using that as just for fun when you hit still, I've noticed it gets active OSB to the top right. And when you get active, it'll go through the whole scan. So you have 6 bars. It'll scan 6 bars and go back to silent. It's kind of fun. We found a practice use for that.
Yeah, you're right. I totally forgot to put this in here. So it'll go through, that's called a frame. So it'll do an entire frame and then go silent again. Kind of useful. It can be paired with all of the, well, the kind of wonky MSI integration that we have in the game. So it can be useful in that regard. I mostly use it for like quickly quieting down the radar when doing air-to-air refueling, because we're gonna LARP, we're gonna do a master arm safe and turn off our radars to, you know, simulate being safe. But yeah, that's about the extent of that function. Biasing is, I've had people run into problems with it when they're trying to lock something up and they just barely miss it with the TDC, and it'll end up putting the radar in bias. And if you start maneuvering, it's going to stay biased onto that that azimuth. So if you maneuver, so let's say I have this contact. You guys can see my mouse, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's say I biased over here in my scan, and I have it set to only 40 degrees. So if I move further off to my right, the scan is going to remain biased onto that side of my aircraft. I don't think it's biased like spatially, like anchored like that. So that bias scan wouldn't move across my scope like that. If it was still like within the 40 degrees, it would soon go outside of the 40 degrees, and then I would lose radar track information on this guy. Does that make sense?
Doesn't it do the same thing with manual?
It would, but in manual, I can freely designate. So again, the thing is that it's only going to go into bias after being in auto mode. And say you want to move the radar scan out of this guy because you're automatically tracking this guy, and you suddenly have a hit that's over here, and you want to move the scan over, but you're still in auto. Instead of going into manual and then TDC depressing over here, damn, click the button. TDC depressing over here, you can just bias the radar towards the new contact and then select them. I know, it's weird. All I'm saying is be aware that bias mode exists. I've found limited use of it.
Yeah, I always make sure I'm on auto on quiz. That's where I get messed up. Forgetting about auto.
Yeah.
I mean, the bias is the same as auto, but you just don't center it in the middle of the scan. You just have it leaning to the right to scan the dude on the right or whatever you're leaning towards.
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure how the logic between automatic and bias is plays with it when you've got two targets. Actually, I'm not sure how the auto logic works when you're dual target tracking. I'm not sure if it centers on the DT1 or if it tries to find the centeroid between DT1 and 2. And this is honestly kind of important if you're trying to do like multi-ship attacks. So I have to test that out.
We're putting that in the list.
But we're gonna press. So, Azimuth elevation. This is by far one of my favorite fucking pages in the Hornet. It is so incredibly good. So, what it is a bore-sighted view of your radar scope, also known as a C scope. What it is you're essentially looking out from the nose and seeing it like you would normally view it. It's almost like TOO mode in the harms. Each one of these hash marks is 30 degrees of azimuth, and these are, I believe, 15 degrees of elevation because I've got it set to 30 degrees. It cannot be accessed while in navigation mode or air-to-ground mode. You have to be in air-to-air mode. You can access it through the tack submenus, so you can that main push tile there, or you can just sensor control switch left if you've got a non-actionable page up on the left EDI. Non-actionable meaning that you can't use the TDC on whatever page is up. So the EW page, FPass, fuel, stores page, anything like that. So this allows very quick steering of the radar beam in any mode. So you can be in like 2bar20 in range while scan. You can steer it using the ASL page and still be in RWS. It's super weird, but it's great. This is most useful on a recommit after, or when you're trying to like turn back into a target and you already kind of know that they're going to be level with you but like off to the side. You can use the TDC cursor to just like point at a certain spot in the ASL format, and it'll start centering the scan right where you clicked. And now that it's properly implemented, you can actually see these these HAFUs. So you'll get surveillance HAFUs on the ASL page also, which is so useful. Sometimes you'll lose awareness of where the bandit is in elevation a lot. This can help so much, because like oftentimes they'll be like way down here, or you'll be way below them, so you have to scan like 10-20 degrees up. It's, again, super useful. So your controls, your FOV button, while it's boxed, it's going to display this yellow box, and that's a visual representation of where the radar is scanning right now. Your scale button is going to kind of step through all your scale options, so it goes from 5 to 15, 30, and then 70, meaning the full 70 degrees, so that will make it a 1-to-1 scale. I prefer to leave it at 30 just because you'll get a wider field of view, but also if something is like that far overhead or below you, you probably have bad radar SA anyway. And the Hornet's radar, like we've seen with the attack radar page, it goes from like 0 to 30, up or down, so this kind of mirrors it. Okay, IFF, this is going to be your automatic IFF ranging, so if you've got auto IFF enabled, excuse me, that's how far the IFF ping is going to go out, or how far it'll try to IFF ping something. So right now it's set to 100 miles. I never touched this, honestly. 5, reset. So reset acts similar to, actually that's not true, it's not very similar at all. So let's say I'm in Twiz and I just want to put the beam back onto center line. I can just press reset and it'll recenter the beam right away from wherever it was. Or I can TDC to press right in the middle of that cross and it'll center the beam up right there in the middle. 6 is your auto IFF azimuth limit. So right now it's set to, if auto IFF was boxed, it would interrogate everything in 140 degrees azimuth. So the entire like front of the aircraft that it can possibly scan. 7 is your expand function. Again, very similar to the attack radar page. It'll expand onto whatever launch and steer you've got. I don't know why I didn't label these. So auto and launch and steer interrogation. Auto means it's going to automatically interrogate based on these two settings that you've set here, so the azimuth and the range. LNS interrogate means it's only going to interrogate your launch and steer. And the Hornet right now currently will automatically interrogate every 10 seconds, depending on what you want it. So it'll automatically send out an IFF interrogation across 100 miles and 140 degrees azimuth, or it will automatically ping your launch and steer every 10 seconds for an IFF response. If you unbox both of these, you're going to have to do the manual IFF using the sensor control switch to press and then going to the right. 8 will send you directly to the stores page, and 9 is going to switch between the radar format and the FLIR format. And we'll go into what the FLIR format looks like. So, just like with the attack radar page, we'll go over the symbology here. So that first set of numbers there, up to the top left, are the beam's current position, so where the center of the beam is relative to the aircraft. So right now it's dead center right, 0 degrees right, 0 degrees down, it's 0, 0. This right here is your launch and steer track information, so it's going to give you your closure velocity, your range, and the bandit heading. This is again your radar FOV, covered in the last slide. 4 is your launch and steer aircraft type, so if you got NCTR or JEM information for it, it'll show up here, show the aircraft type. And then your IFF information, so it's coming up as unknown on link 16. So it's got no friendly or hostile response from yourself, and no friendly or hostile response from your surveillance off-board track. And this will correlate to the shape that you see. So as you interrogate it, so if I interrogated this guy right here, it's showing up friendly from the off-board track, but I don't know. You can see that the top is that staple. It would change from that kind of shield symbol to a circle on link 16 here. Just like we see right here. So the FLIR sublevel. So again, if I press that tile there, I'm going to then start being able to steer the FLIR line of sight. Where the hell did I start? Right. So the push buttons, right? This will tell you what the FLIR is currently set at in terms of field of view. So right now it's set to wide field of view. I could push this from the ASL page and have it go step through wide, medium, and narrow field of view. I can't go through the zoom, but this will preset it. 2 is going to be your slaving, or what the FLIR is going to slave to. Right now it's set to slave to your current launch and steer, so it's going to slave onto whatever my radar is set to launch and steer on. If I press this key right here, BST bore sight, it's going to just zero out the FLIR's line of sight. However, it does give me manual control after I press that button, so I can go straight to FLIR display, and I can start manually moving the FLIR around once I've set it to bore sight. 5, where's... Yeah, right, so return. So this is going to show you what mode you're in. So right now it's in FLIR point. I can press this again, and it's going to return me to the radar or the attack radar format. 4 is going to be enter the FLIR page, so it's going to actually send you to what the FLIR is looking at. That hexagon in the middle, that is the FLIR's point, or FLIR's FOV indicator, just like that big square is the radar's FOV. And you can see as you swap between the radar and the FLIR, one gets kind of grayed out, while the active one becomes, brighter. And so when you've got friendlies information available, you'll also get their call sign information. So this is going to be Springfield 11. It's an F-15 friendly on link 16. This typically doesn't come up for like hostile contacts, but this can help you identify friendlies in a pinch. So, FLIR. Pretty neat tool. I don't use it enough. Very useful to visual ID an aircraft, especially from range. This image was taken from, I want to say, like 18, 19 nautical miles, somewhere around there, close to 20. So you can get pretty reliable info out of it from pretty far away now. So again, that top left push tile is going to be your FOV setting, and right under that you can see the current zoom setting, also repeated here. That center button is going to switch you between TV and IR mode. I want to say you can long press the rate FOV button, that pinky button on your throttle, not on your stick, and it'll, as long as you hold it down for more than a second and then release it, it'll swap between TV and IR mode. That reticle means these gates. So if you want to just don't want to see the gates for a second, you can just press this and unbox it, and it'll give you a clearer picture. The slave functions are repeated. Setup. I know people think it's just a grayscale. Honestly, kind of useful because you can adjust the brightness and contrast so you can see all the blocks well, and then you'll get a good contrast picture. So don't be afraid to use that, or don't think it's useless. 7 is your automatic level gain controls. So right now it's unboxed, so I can access level and gain controls by pressing that push button there. 8 right here says WHT, so it's set to white hot. I can press this and it'll swap it between white hot and black hot. Oh shit, maybe, god damn it, now I'm doubting myself. I'm not sure if long press on the right FOV button was to switch polarity or to switch modes. I cannot remember. But you can access it through the page itself also. Very little reason to swap out of white hot most of the time. At least I found. But hey, I don't know. Maybe you want to set it to black hot. Who knows? So this right here is going to put you into level and gain mode. So it will swap out the focus and zoom to level and gain. And then you can increase, decrement, increase, decrease the level and gain exposure on the FLIR page itself, or the FLIR image. It's not available in TV mode because TV mode it's a TV mode. So, Symbology. You're gonna get your FLIR line of sight azimuth information right here, right under the mode that it's in. So right now it's pointing 9 degrees to the right. You're also gonna get this little caret thingy, which you should be familiar with in air-to-ground functions. So this is pointing towards the front of the aircraft, slightly to the right, which is repeated here. 3, this guy right here, it's hard to see, but that it's gonna repeat your velocity vector and waterline. While in the FLIR format. I want to say you can declutter it, but I'm drawing a blank here. 4 is the point track gates, so you can tell it's got a point track because of these bars. If it does not have a point track, you're going to see the standard cross, and once it acquires one, you'll see that little dot in the middle, and the gates over whatever you tracked. 5 is your water line, or your horizon line, and then 6 is your elevation. So right now it's level with you, so whatever this is, it's 9 degrees to the right and level with you. This is your elevation information. Any questions on, actually I didn't even go over how to point track something right. So the Hornet's weird in that if you've got a FLIR pod mounted and you're in air-to-air mode, it actually automatically displays the FLIR format instead of the ASL format, and it's always on your left DDI. So the way to point track something is you just go sensor control switch to the left, or whatever side the FLIR page is at, and you'll just keep mashing that button until you get those bars. Then once you get those bars, you can stop mashing that sensor control switch, because now it's automatically tracking. And again, this is another great way to plug in IFF information once you've got visual on something. Any questions on the FLIR?
I just want to say, I don't think you're crazy. The long press, I think, will take it from TV to IR, and if you do it after that, I think it switches black hot to white hot in that mode. I can't remember what it does.
Okay, so maybe I did get it right. I think short press is switching polarities then.
I think you can raise long press. The short press is not what was field of view, but I might not be very correct.
No, because I don't think you have field of view control while in air-to-air mode. It just uses the elevation controls. Oh, that's right. By the way, you don't have to press these buttons. You have the HOTAS command of the elevation, antenna elevation, doing the zoom controls. Okay. If there are no further questions on the FLIR, we can move on to the SA page. Nobody? Okay.
Actually,
Yes?
you said the radar elevation control changes the FLIR field of view? So or zoom?
It changes the zoom. So it'll automatically step through wide, medium, and narrow, and then it'll do the 2 zoom levels of narrow.
Okay, right on. Thank you.
Yep. So your situational awareness page. Again, this is typically on your AMPCD at the bottom. And again, the Hornet wants you to have it there with the way that the sensor control switch behaves in the air-to-air mode. You can quickly swap between the SA and HSI just by pressing sensor control switch down once it's already there. So we'll go over the controls, going around. So I hardly use this. This will overlay the map. The thing about the map is that I think since they changed it, outside of if your range scale is more than 40 miles, you won't see the map at all. So if I had the range scale set to 80 miles, it's just going to go black. Other thing to keep note of, a lot of the maps don't actually have good map information for the wider zoom levels. For instance, Syria has really, I want to say, no map information for the 40 nautical mile scale, but once you zoom into like 10 nautical miles, you actually get good map information from it. So limited use, in my opinion. 2 is your range scale selection. You can also, it's called bumping range, and I didn't go over bumping range in the attack radar page, but it works similar. What you'll do is you'll take your cursor and you'll go to the top, and then in less than 1 second, you bump it back down. It'll bump the range up. Similar thing will happen if you go down. So if I move it over outside the compass and then move it back in, it'll decrease the range. I find this really useful, again, on a recommit. Like if I'm trying to turn back into a bandit and like I originally had it set to 40, but now I want to look closer to like 20 nautical miles around me, I can quickly do that using the range bump. MK1 right there, that's your mark. So in air-to-air mode, it'll just mark your current position. So if I was to click that right now, it would just create a mark point under where I just overflew. Decenter is going to decenter this image, so it'll put your aircraft at the bottom of the screen, and then it'll give you like a forward field of view sort of format, and it essentially doubles the range that the scale setting is set to currently. So if I'm at 40 and I click decenter, I'm going to see 80 nautical miles in front of me. This is all your like waypoint stuff, so this will set the navigation computer to steer onto the selected waypoint. This is going to cycle through the selected waypoint, and that's the current waypoint that it's selected on. Waypoint designate will create that as the target point. Sequence will step through whatever sequence of waypoints you've created. Currently, the way it works is like sequence 1 is the only one that really matters. Boxing and unboxing it will step through sequence 1, 2, and 3. Limited use right now. Transmit, what the hell am I saying? Yeah, enable, disable, transmit, designate. So this is gonna show those like lock lines between flight members in your SA page, which again is really useful when you're trying to sort out targets. Like if I had a wingman, it would look like one of these with like a B through it if he was number 2, and I would be able to see what he's locking up. It would stem from his HAFU out to whatever HAFU he's locking onto. It gets kind of rough with tightly compacted targets, but there's a way around that with your expand function. I'll go over the step function in a second. PLID brings up all your PLID options, so it'll give you the option to label something hostile, friendly, or remain unknown, ambiguous, under the submenu. Don't really use it much, but again, it's a tool that you have available. Maybe one day we'll get full IFF implementation. 14 is your sensor sublevel, and we're about to get into that one. Or not. We're going to talk about symbology again. Man, a lot of talking. All right, so first things first is your steering info to your current waypoint. And that's right up here in this top right corner. So this is telling you what what direction you need to steer to. So it's telling me to turn 177, so directly behind me, for 1.7 miles, and it's telling me it's going to take me 12 seconds to get to the currently selected waypoint, which is waypoint 0. 2 is your tuck information, or target under cursor. That's what tuck stands for. And this is chock full of really useful information that you could watch out for. The first line is the aircraft type. The second line is its current ground speed and its current heading. So this guy is traveling at 400 knots ground speed, going 023. Just like Easy was having a pet peeve about 3-digit heading codes right there. There it is, 023. You happy?
Yep.
Under that is your bra information. So it's 027 from you for 23 miles. And the bottom line is the bullseye information. So this guy is 087 for 11 miles from bullseye. And you can see bullseye right here. That symbol right there in the middle. And that's your currently selected, your target under your cursor. You can also see that it's the launch and steer with the star that is barely visible under that other HAFU. So both of these guys are detected by own ship sensors only, as you can see, because only the top of the HAFU is filled out. 5 is own ship. That's you know, it's where you are relative to it. 6 right here, this entire block, is your countermeasures repeater. So it's going to tell you how much chaff, that's the top row, and how many flares you got left, along with the numerical counts. And 7 up here is your cursor's centroid to bullseye. So it's a little off relative to what the launch and steer is, but that's okay. That's what that number means. This can give you some like rough estimates of like, say I wanted to just put my cursor over, say, like a SAM ring, and I just like wanted to know what its bullseye coordinates were. I just like find the center of the ring and say, okay, well that's about bullseye, 270 for 20-ish, feels right here, or 30, I don't know, somewhere around there. But you would be able to read it in this top left block. So decenter is what I was talking about. It kind of puts your own ship aircraft down at the bottom, and then it like zooms out towards your front. So when you press the step function, it'll automatically give you tuck information right at the bottom corner. And there's your another friendly HAFU. And you're also going to get, so this box right here, that's your FLIR line of sight. So right now it's not currently looking at whatever this guy is. It's just pointed straight ahead, and it's going to give you, so when you've got the FLIR selected like that and you've got a step function right there, it's actually giving you the FLIR's line of sight to bullseye. So that's what that number is right there. If I didn't have the FLIR on, or it wasn't on screen, I would get the TDC, or the cursor's bullseye information. So, your sensor sub-level that I was going to get to. So, the IFF button, I don't know why I even labeled it. It's currently not really implemented fully. You can press through that thing and it's not going to do much. At some point, it'll allow you to like filter, say, like friendlies only or hostiles only, and it will only display that symbology here on the SA page. But we don't have that yet, so we can just keep dreaming and wanting and whining about it. 2 is actually useful. So this is your RWR repeater information. So much like we saw with the attack radar and those like little yellow triangles, you're gonna get those yellow triangles on this on the compass rose here on the SA page. The thing to note is that it's only going to display air intercept RWR returns, so you're not going to get SAM or surface emitters on the SA page, which is a little weird, but that's the way it works. It's This is more designed for the air-to-air fight. So friend, it's going to display friendly RWR returns. So if you have it off, it's not going to display any friendly air intercept RWR returns. Unknown means it's going to right now it's boxed, so that means it will display unknown returns, so it's not correlated to friendly or hostile. And then 5 is just going to return you back out to the top level of the SA page. These two don't currently have a function at the moment. The friendly to friendly, or FF, is gonna be your fighter to fighter link, and that's between like you and these guys out here using JTIDS mids. PPLI is going to be between you and your own flight members. So if I didn't want to see returns from whatchamacallit, from these guys, I would just turn off the FF one. But if I still wanted to get returns from my flight, I would keep PPLI on. And serve is the surveillance donors, or the E2 that you're gonna get. So that'll be those like smaller HAFUs that have the fuck, where were they? I need to go back. So these guys, you'll see this on the SA page. If you turn off surveillance, you won't get these hits anymore. Okay. Yeah, so that'll turn off surveillance donors. 9, I'm not sure really if it's fully implemented, but that should do FLIR correlation. So if you unbox this, it will no longer do correlated. It won't show correlated on the HUD when you lock something up if it's correlated between the radar and the FLIR. Yeah, that about covers it there. So, like all the other pages, there is an expand function. And again, useful for trying to pick out tightly packed groups. So, the way to do it is you're going to place... firstly, you have to be in the SA page as your sensor of interest. So, you can tell by the little diamond there. So, you're going to place whatever HAFU you want to get as your target under cursor. And then you're going to press the Recce event mark switch on your stick. And then the SA page is going to center onto that tuck. And this is now displaying a 10 nautical mile range around the guy that you just expanded on. So this will allow you to get a closer look at, from a top-down view, not just from the radar view, where they are relative to each other. And again, it's going to show you your launch and steer information. So if I wanted to step contacts, I would just sensor control switch back over to like the right or left to go into the ASL or radar attack page. Then I can press the nose wheel steering button. It'll swap between these two guys. It'll step between them. Any questions on the SA page? No. Yeah, it's mostly just using the TDC and sensor control switch down and the Recce button. Be careful when using the Recce button. So I've ran into this myself where I'm trying to like blank the JHMCS while I have the SA page as soy. And then you're like, why the hell is it not working? It's because you have your SA page as soy and it's trying to do the expand function and not the blank function for the JHMCS. Which is kind of annoying, but I mean, it is what it is. Alright, so I actually didn't have an image for this, but your JHMCS is going to display these things. I don't know why I just put down HUD symbology. But it will give you your normalized in-range display circle, or your nerd circle. It will always show the EW repeater, so you're going to get the lock lines or the RWR lines on the JHMCS. It's going to show your currently selected tuck. It's going to show friendlies. It's going to prioritize friendly flight members over friendlies, and then that over your tuck. So there's actually like inverse of how it prioritizes them. But you can change that. And let me try and demonstrate what I mean by target under cursor for that. So let me see if this works. No. Thank you, Discord, for being shit. Let me stream that again. Okay. So 1 second here. All right. So what I'm gonna try and do here is I'm gonna try and place this guy as the target under cursor here. So I'll get the information there. I'll turn on my JHMCS, turn off active pause, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to steer towards this guy. Okay. Nice, and off to the side here. And so, as you can see, you've got the nerd circle in the middle. So this is your normalized in-range display circle, and you guys cannot see my cursor, can you? So let me change how that looks.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now you guys can see my cursor?
Yep.
Okay. So currently you can see that there's the diamond over it that is telling me I'm locking onto it. So normalized in range. That inner tick mark right here is the range that it's currently at relative to these stages. So that guy right there is your R arrow, or your aerodynamic maximum range. That one at 6 o'clock is always your R max. This is that doesn't make sense. That's weird. This should be R no escape zone, and then this would be R min, but I'm not sure why it's changing. That arrow right there is your launch and steer's aspect to you. So right now it's traveling across my HUD from my left to my right. As you can see, as he travels, this kind of thing changes around a little bit. But what we're looking for is this. So you'll notice that you're going to get a little star over your selected contact. So actually, let me do it over this guy. Right there. See? So if I have it cursored over in the SA page, I can just look around and look for that star. That's going to tell me where to look. Again, this is useful on a recommit if I'm like, okay, I just turned around and I just want to like quickly get some SA on who's out there. The other way I can do it is I can just press the step function. Can I do it from there? No, it doesn't work that way. So I can also do that, and it'll again show us the tuck track, and just keep stepping through them until I get the one that I want. And that guy's the one over there. So it'll prioritize it over other unfriendly tracks, because the way it defaults to is it'll show friendlies over anything else. So if I look off to the side over here, correlate it, I should be able to see the E2. Yep, there it is. So friendlies are circles. The unknowns, it's going to sort of repeat the same format as all the other HAFUs. But yeah, again, so you'll see the RW repeater at the edges there, and that again is useful for correlating tracks that you may be looking for. So hey, like I can see right there, there's MiG-29 RWR returns. I can tell it's probably these guys right there, so I can cursor over them and look in that general direction. And look, how about that? There's two SC-27s out there. And I can correlate them with what I just saw on the SA page. I can correlate them with my eyes now. Well, not really, I can't see shit. But yeah, there's a lot of integration in the Hornet sensors. That's about the last thing I had. Yeah, it's a lot of sensors, and they all talk to each other, and when they're all working, they work really well. It's just a matter of being able to understand them and utilize them as best you can. So that's about all I had for today. I will open the floor up for questions if you guys want to have ask questions on anything specific or anything that I missed. Now is your chance.
Just to clarify, maybe I heard it, next week is like the recommended settings for sensors, and this is just like what they are, kind of using.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over some of the like tips and tricks of like how to best utilize the radar. More of the button mashing and less of the academic of like how does the system work.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because I've been talking for what, like over an hour, and now my voice is starting to get scratchy.
Yeah, my brain's right too, but I think I'm out of things, but
Don't worry, I'm gonna record it just like the rest of these, and I'll post them up onto YouTube or something. I'll talk to Wiki or Jefferson or somebody up in leadership.
Sweet.
And if not, they're gonna be up on the Twitch page, my Twitch page. So if you want to just like pop in there and like see the recordings, they're also available. But yeah.
Oh, awesome. That's, yeah, I didn't know anything about the regular, but I think I need to go find that.
I just wanted to say thanks, man. I'm trying to cross train a little bit on the Hornet, so I appreciate it.
You've come just in time then.
That is great information. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know. So, and I can't roll before, so there'll be a lot of practicing from now until forever when I get proficient with the sensors.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Hey, do you have the link? Did you say they have the link for your Twitch page?
It's up right now on CSG chat. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, I put it up preemptively before the stream started, just in case anybody wanted to tune in.
Give this
Thank you very much, Roger. Yeah, dude, thank you.
Appreciate it, dude.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I don't have access to the page.
really? Well, hold on. Let me shut down the stream first.
I never read it all the way.